Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to demystify the biomechanics of a super common, yet honestly often misunderstood movement breakdown, the squat collapse. We're going to do this by digging into a really fascinating clinical case study of a lifter named Katie. We're going to look at the hidden mechanics of her movement, figure out exactly why her form is breaking down under load, and then outline a straightforward step-by-step blueprint to fix it. If you've ever struggled with knee tracking or you've just felt wobbly at the bottom of a heavy lift, you're definitely going to want to hear this. Here is our quick roadmap for the explainer. First, we'll cover the anatomy of a squat collapse. Second, the kinetic chain connection. Third, the pickleball fatigue factor. Fourth, stance and setup modifications. And finally, the corrective workout protocol. Okay, let's jump right into this highly relatable gym scenario. Why exactly do our knees just decide to cave inward right when we need them to be their absolute strongest? It's so frustrating, right? We usually just blame weak legs and call it a day, but the reality is actually way more intricate. We need to uncover the hidden mechanics behind a valgus collapse, and to do that, we have to look really closely at our case study. Section 1. Anatomy of a squat collapse. Let's observe Katie's mechanics. To really understand what's happening at the knee, we actually have to start our observation from the ground up. As Katie drops into her squat, the very first thing we notice is a massive loss of structural foot integrity. We're seeing what's called dynamic pronation and eversion. What this means in plain English is that as she lowers the weight, her medial arches, the inside of her feet, flatten significantly against the floor. There's a distinct inward collapse of the ankle joint. Think of your foot as the foundation of a house. If the foundation sinks on one side, literally everything built on top of it is immediately compromised. Because Katie completely lacks that stable base at the foot, we see the primary symptom. Coinciding exactly with that inward rolling of the ankle, her knees start tracking inside her toes. This dangerous inward caving happens right at the absolute most critical, vulnerable part of the lift, the bottom transition, the hole, and the first third of her ascent back up. Section 2. The kinetic chain connection, from floor to hip. So here is the crucial takeaway. A valgus collapse is almost never just a knee problem. When that medial arch goes flat, biomechanically, it physically forces the tibia, your shin bone, to rotate internally. So this knee valgus is a direct consequence of that ankle pronation, but it doesn't stop there. It's combined with another huge issue higher up the chain, the underactivation of the hip external rotators, specifically the gluteus medius on the side of the hip. The knee is essentially just caught in the crossfire between a collapsing ankle below it and a weak or underactive hip above it. They're all teaming up to create this structural breakdown. Section 3. The pickleball fatigue factor. Let's look at the hidden variable. Now for the plot twist. It turns out Katie played an hour of pickleball immediately prior to this lifting session. No way, right? Who knew a friendly paddle sport could totally wreck your squat? But look at the mechanics. The constant lateral shuffling heavily taxes muscles like the peroneals and the tibialis posterior. Those are the muscles running down the outside and inside of your calf, which results in the complete inability to maintain that crucial foot arch. Meanwhile, all those sudden decelerations and rotational movements on the court completely exhaust the gluteus medius, leading to a massive loss of lateral hip stability. Before Katie even unracked the barbell, her primary stabilizers were already cooked. It really all boils down to this core philosophy. When the primary stabilizers tire out, the nervous system defaults to the path of least resistance. Because Katie's arches and lateral hips were so incredibly fatigued from the court, neural drive basically failed. Her nervous system just couldn't recruit those tired muscles to hold her knees out, so her body simply took the easiest route down and up, resulting in that total structural collapse. Section 4. Stance and setup modifications. Let's rebuild the foundation. Okay, before we even start talking about corrective exercises, we have to look at how Katie's initial stance was actively working against her tired stabilizers. Katie originally used a pretty wide stance with significant external foot rotation, so a lot of toe flare. While a wide stance can absolutely help some lifters hit depth, for Katie it was severely exacerbating the medial collapse. Without that fresh lateral hip strength to push her knees out over those flared toes, the wide stance was causing all the barbell's load to dump directly into her flattened medial arches. The fix? Super simple. A slightly narrower stance with reduced toe flare. This naturally keeps the load balanced across the entire foot. The main reason we want that narrower, more moderate setup is because it makes it significantly easier to maintain what we call the tripod foot position. This just means tracking your weight equally across 3 specific points: the heel, the big toe, and the pinky toe. By narrowing her stance, Kitty can actually feel these 3 points gripping the floor, creating a solid, absolutely unshakable anchor for the rest of her kinetic chain to rely on. Section 5. The Corrective Workout Protocol, a 4-part prescription. All right, so we know what's wrong, we know why it's happening, and we fix the initial stance. Now let's dive into a chronological, step-by-step prescription to actively correct this movement pattern in real time. This 4-part plan perfectly maps the timeline of your gym session from start to finish. We start with a pre-workout reset, move into dynamic band activation, apply some awesome mental cues during the workout itself, and finish up with post-workout recovery. Let's break these down. Step 1 is the pre-workout mobility and reset. This takes just 5 to 7 minutes before you touch a single weight. The goal here is to release tight musculature and prime the foot and ankle complex. We use 90-90 hip switches with extension to improve hip rotation. Then we add a standing soleus and calf stretch specifically to relieve the residual tension from all that continuous pickleball deceleration. This gives us much cleaner ankle mobility. Finally, we do active arch lifting, also known as the short foot exercise. This is a brilliant insider trick for a neural check-in. By practicing pulling the ball of the foot toward the heel, Katie actively engages that tired tibialis posterior, literally waking it up for the heavy lifting ahead. Step 2 shifts from passive stretching to dynamic activation, specifically using something called reactive neuromuscular training, or RNT. We have Katie perform light goblet squats with a resistance band placed just below her knees. Now here's the cool part. The band actively pulls her knees inward, straight into the very valgus collapse we are trying to avoid. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it completely forces her nervous system to fight back, actively firing the glutes to push those knees out. We pair this with 2-second iso holds at the bottom of the squat, right where she usually caves, to build intense positional awareness and localized endurance in those specific stabilizers. Now we're into the working sets. Step 3 involves tactile and internal system cues to set constraints that naturally prevent the structural breakdown. Words absolutely matter here, and mental cues can physically counteract the collapse. Before descending, she should think, screw your feet into the floor. That triggers hip external rotation. During the lift, cues like drive the floor away through the outside edges of your shoes or root the big toe, pinky toe, and heel really help maintain that tripod foot. And as she drives up, just thinking spread the floor with your feet ensures those lateral hip muscles stay engaged the whole way through. Finally, we reach step 4. The protocol finishes with targeted length recovery. We have to decompress those tight hip structures after they've been heavily loaded under fatigue. A half-kneeling hip flexor stretch decompresses the psoas and rectus femoris to counteract overall tightness. Then, an elevated pigeon stretch targets the deep hip rotators and the glutes. This step is all about ensuring the lifter maintains optimal joint clearance so they are completely ready and healthy for their very next lower body session. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really think about for your own training. We just saw how a totally innocent game of pickleball completely altered a lifter's biomechanics, leading to a serious valgus collapse. So ask yourself, what hidden variables in your daily routine, whether it's recreational sports, sitting at a desk all day, or even just your daily commute, might be secretly altering your biomechanics in the gym? Understanding your own kinetic chain outside the gym is absolutely the key to mastering your movement inside it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the squat collapse, and keep analyzing those mechanics.